the victims of the massacres in Baku, Sungait, and Karabakh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, my fellow Armenian Americans, for this wonderful invitation. I will be speaking about the tragedies which took place to the ethnic Armenians in Soviet Azerbaijan and towards the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union. So please take a look at the map. You know, the map behind me. So the map behind me shows the map of where Armenians lived in Soviet Azerbaijan. To right here to the south, you can see the Nakhchivan region, which was totally emptied by the Azerbaijani authorities during Soviet rule. And this is Artsakh, the Republic of Artsakh, which is former Nagorno-Karabakh region that Armenians inhabited. And many of you can see that I just want you to focus on one village. Many think that the whole conflict started from Sungait and Baku and Karabakh, but in reality the conflict itself started from my native village of Chardahlu. Well, not my native, but my great-grandparents were born there, my mother's maternal grandparents. And that started in 1987. So I will be talking about it a little bit more, you know, in the presentation itself. So the history of Armenians in Azerbaijan. According to the statistics, about 500,000 Armenians lived in Soviet Azerbaijan in the 1989 census. Armenians lived, worked, and were very active in all sectors of Azerbaijan society until they were brutally tortured, raped, killed, and expelled from the entire territory of modern-day Azerbaijan from the late 1980s and early 1990s, where no single Armenian lives there right now. After the expulsion of the ethnic Armenians from the entire territory of modern-day Azerbaijan, all Armenian historical, cultural, religious monuments were fully destroyed by the current dictatorial ruling elite of the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Aliyev and the Pashayev families, and ethnic Azerbaijani nationalists led by the Azerbaijani National Front Party, the APFP. So this is a map of the city of Baku in 1914. The Armenians lived in Baku since the late 1800s. They moved there for a better economy with the discovery of oil. Armenians built the majority of the city of Baku, the old part of the city and the old part of the town, the ballet and opera house, and many beautiful buildings that right now the Azerbaijani authorities are claiming that they were not built by Armenians. So the city landmarks, as you can see, this is the Armenian Quarter right here, the Armenian Quarter. The Armenian in Malagan Cemetery, that's the Armenian cemetery that was fully destroyed in the 1990s, which I will show. My grandfather, my mom's father, was buried there. I have the before and after the pictures of the destruction. As you can see, the Armenians had a church in the heart of the city in number 6. That's where the old part of the city was. So Armenians have a long history in Azerbaijan, not only right now, but around Karabakh, Artsakh. It was one of the ancient Armenian provinces, and Armenians have lived there for thousands of years. And right now their leadership is trying to falsify history and rewrite history, which you cannot do. So the Armenians in the government of Soviet Azerbaijan, many of you may not know that that's my mother, Karim Mikhailian, with Nikolai Konstantinovich Baybakov, who was the chairman of the State Planning Committee, Gosplan, of the former Soviet Union. That picture was taken on the right side of the building of the government through the private entrance. There were many Armenians that worked in the government of Azerbaijan, and my mother was one of them. She was a senior economist. A lot of the current political elite in Azerbaijan were my mom's neighbors since childhood, including the current foreign minister of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Elmar Mamediyarov. He was my mom's neighbor. Many of the diplomats that are right now representing Azerbaijan in the European Parliament were my mother's neighbors. So Armenians were in different sectors, different classes. Some were higher class, some were middle class, and some were lower class. But everybody lived a very comfortable life, helping each other. And also, where the flag is standing in the government building, it was Lenin's statue and Lenin's monument there. And I will show you a picture later on about the demonstrations which the Azerbaijani nationalists were marching against the Armenian population and demanding the execution of Armenians right from the window. That picture was taken on the right side. I will tell about that. Many of you, I did tell you the Armenians of Çardakhlu, that's where the conflict started. These are my great-grandparents, Haikanush and Ruben. They were born in Çardakhlu. Haikanush was born in 1918 in the Armenian village of Çardakhlu. Ruben Danilyan was born in 1910 in the village of Çardakhlu. They got married in the village of Çardakhlu and they lived their entire lives in Baku, Soviet Azerbaijan. Ruben died in Baku on February 7th, 1987, and is buried in Yerevan, Armenia. My family, being from the Bagramian family, our family already knew that something was going to happen. So my mom's uncle, General Bagramian, the nephew of Marshal Bagramian, told as soon as he died that we're not going to bury him in Baku. So eventually, when they transferred, my great-grandmother followed my mom to Yerevan because my mom moved in 1985. She married and moved to Yerevan. And in 1987, that was the last time my mom was there. And my great-grandmother died in Yerevan, Armenia on December 3rd, 1988. So I'm very fortunate that my great-grandparents, who I adored with all of my heart, are next to each other, and it means a lot to me that I can visit their graves, knowing the fact that I cannot visit the grave of my grandfather in Baku. So that's my great-grandmother, Haikanush, and she is the first cousin of Archbishop Barkev Martirosyan, the current primate of the Diocese of the Artsakh Republic of the Armenian Apostolic Church. They're first cousins, so I just wanted to include that Barkev was born in the city of Sumgait, but our roots are from the same village of Çardakhlu. That is from my family archives. Those are the Armenians of Çardakhlu. That's Marshal Bagramian on the left side, and my mom's uncle, General Ilya Bagramian, on the right side of the family. So the pogroms against Armenians in the village of Çardakhlu, Soviet Azerbaijan. Many of you always, as I said, think that the conflict started in Sumgait. The pogrom started in Sumgait and then Kirovabad and Baku. But in reality, the pogroms against the Armenian population started in the village of Çardakhlu, which I showed in the beginning in 1987. So from September to October of 1987, massive violent attacks started against Armenians throughout the village of Çardakhlu. By 1988, the Azerbaijani forces emptied the entire village of its Armenian population and renamed Çardakhlu to Çanlibel, looted and burnt the museum dedicated to Marshal Bagramian, and fully destroyed the ancient Armenian cemeteries and Armenian churches throughout the village, where my great-grandparents and my ancestors were baptized and married within those churches. And as you can see on the map where Çardakhlu is located, it is northern Karabakh, Artsakh. That was historically part of historical Armenia. And now it's under the jurisdiction of Azerbaijan, unfortunately. So after those attacks against the Armenian populations in Chardaklu, the Armenians were fed up in Karabakh because they were regarded as second-class citizens. Even during Soviet times, the infrastructure in comparison to the rest of Azerbaijan, the Artsakh region, the Nagorno-Karabakh region, was always underdeveloped. So the Armenians had to build everything by themselves with their own resources always, without the government allocating money for this, for those infrastructures to be built. So after the incident in Chardaklu, the Karabakh Movement started on February 13th, 1988. First demonstrations in Stepanakert, as you can see in the pictures right now, people demanding reunification with Armenia. It was due to the authorities of the Soviet Union that Artsakh became part of Azerbaijan and the autonomy of Azerbaijan. And if we didn't start the struggle, then we would have lost all of our historical monuments and history in Artsakh, just like what happened in Nakhchivan, where over 20,000 Armenian monuments were fully destroyed by the Azerbaijani authorities and their government. So February 18th through 26, 1988, major demonstrations held in Yerevan for the unification of the Karabakh Movement. From February 20, 1988, the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, which was an autonomous republic within Azerbaijan, Soviet Azerbaijan, the Supreme Council issued a request to transfer the region to Soviet Armenia. And unfortunately, the Soviet authorities once again denied Armenians their right to self-determination and freedom. And that was the biases of the Soviet Union. So following that, it cooled down, but it was not fully, in a cool situation. The pogroms of Armenians in the city of Sumgait, Soviet Azerbaijan, started. The location was Sumgait, Soviet Azerbaijan. Date, February 26th to March 1st, 1988. That was the date when, the last day, actually, when I said that the majority, the demonstrations for unification ended in Armenia at that point. And that same day, the Azeri authorities started attacking the Armenian population. So the target was the Armenian population. Type of attacks: murder, rape, and riot. Deaths, 32 official data, plus 200 Armenian sources. And of course, we will never know the truth because the Soviet authorities always deflated, the fact of the casualties. They never, inflated the casualties. So the non-fatal injuries unknown. Armenian population fully expelled or killed throughout the city. So pogroms of the Armenians, as you can see in the pictures, the images captured during the videotapes, the images of burnt automobiles and the massive throngs of rioters on the streets of Sumgait on the left side. On the right side, you can see military police escorting the Armenian civilians out of Sumgait. Most of the weapons during the attacks were sharpened metals said to be produced in the city's industrial plants. And I have a story about that because the manager of the plant was Armenian. When the Azeri authorities came and said, we need to order these sorts of weapons, they told them that it was for hunting purposes, for military purposes. They didn't expect that those weapons would be used against the Armenian population. So once he found out that those weapons that he was ordered to produce were used against the Armenian population, he went insane and he committed suicide. So everything cooled down temporarily, and The Armenians in Sumgait in Baku never thought that that would come to Baku, because Baku was a multicultural and multi-ethnic city where Armenians, Russians, Jews, Georgians, Azeris, and others lived in peace and harmony. And sometimes we Armenians can be very naive. When they start to target us, we need to leave. It doesn't matter what we have. Our safety and security is the number one priority. So later on in the fall of 1988, November of 1988, the Armenian population in the city of Kirovabad, the second largest city of Azerbaijan, was targeted. The Armenian population, was attacked brutally with murder, rape, and riot. Total deaths, 130 killed, non-fatal injuries, 200 and more. Armenian population fully expelled or killed, and currently the Armenian monastery there is no longer, because they destroyed it and wiped it out from the face of the earth. Then I just wanted to tell another stories that I've heard, because I did interviews with Baku Armenians, that during the after November of 1988, on December 7th of 1988, the Armenian earthquake struck in our Soviet Armenia, and the majority of the people that died, not majority, but many people that died, were refugees from Azerbaijan that couldn't be settled in Yerevan because of it being overcrowded. So they were sent to Leninakan, Spitak, and other parts. So many of those who fled death died in their homeland. And the Azeris were celebrating the deaths of Armenians. They were baking pastries that they would only bake for New Year's and their holidays, joyous holidays, and they were celebrating on the streets that Armenians have died. And that's the policies of Azerbaijan. So the pogrom after that in 1990 was the final stage of the mass extermination of Armenians from Azerbaijan. So from January 12th to 19th of 1990, the Armenians were targeted throughout the city. Armenian population, 90 deaths, Armenian civilians died. Non-fatal injuries were 700 Armenians. The Armenian population was fully expelled or killed. And that was the goal of the entire Azerbaijani authorities, to get rid of the Armenian population and steal and rob the Armenians of their wealth. So on the left side is, remember when I said the government building where my mother worked? That's where the flag is right now, but that was Lenin's statue. So these are the Azerbaijani Nationalists from the Popular Front Party, demanding the death of Armenians. These are old mobs, and the Azerbaijanis are calling them their heroes, their martyrs. On January 20th, they always celebrate that day, that their martyrs died, but those are the killers of the Armenian population. So these are the people, this is just a small portion of the nationalists gathered, chanting death to Armenians and the exile of Armenians from Azerbaijan. The map on the right side is actually the map that was designed by the Azerbaijani authorities. This is the city of Baku, and where you see the black crosses, they marked the Armenian areas with crosses and handed every single Azerbaijani nationalist from the demonstration to go and loot and kill and rape Armenians. So that was a map that was being ready from the January 13th till 1990, that was handed to the Azerbaijani nationalists to attack the Armenians throughout the city. So these are the results of those mobs, what they did in Baku. As you can see, the lifeless dead bodies of the Armenian civilians, simply because they were targeted because they were Armenian, again. As you can see, the trucks, everything is being burned. Wherever Armenians were riding, they would destroy. with Armenians inside the cars and burned those cars as well. So many of the Armenians, as you can see, the ethnic Armenians fleeing, being evacuated by the boats and ships from the port of Baku in the Caspian Sea with the help of the Russian soldiers. And those are the only things that the Armenians could bring with them. Their 2 bags or 1 bag, whatever they could. And they were transported to different areas. Some of them fled to Turkmenistan, some of them fled to Russia, to flee wherever they could to be safe, because there are even the borders, they were checking if you were Armenian, they would kill you, they would rob you. If they saw a woman wearing a gold earring, they would just snatch the earring with flesh, not thinking about that those are human beings. And these are the ethnic Armenian refugees arriving to Armenia from Baku. And it's at Zavartnots International Airport. The airport is no longer functional, and we have a new airport, but that airport means a lot to me because it is the actual historical monument that witnessed the tragedies of the Armenians of the 20th century and the refugees fleeing. And that child, I don't know where that child is, but I'm happy that that child survived and was able to live and prosper and wherever he went with his family. So the Armenian Cemetery in Baku, as you can see, this is from before 2006. The Russian soldiers, World War II veterans, everybody who died was buried on the northern part. The Armenians were in the central cemetery, the most green and luscious, and then the Malagans were on the southern part of the cemetery. However, when Armenians fled, the Azeri authorities started attacking the Armenian cemetery in Baku. This is the year after 2008. As you can see, a lot of the green areas, they started building on the cemetery grounds. They started cleaning the Armenian cemetery, excavating the remains and throwing them 20 kilometers towards the Caspian Sea. There is or 10 kilometers, there is a city called Ofsan. It's a small town that's where they reburied the remains. But the Armenians, they just did whatever they wanted to with the remains in the cemetery. That is the monument to the mausoleum of my grandfather, my mother's father's in Baku, Azerbaijan. He died in 1963, and when he was brutally murdered by non-Armenian and non-Azeri. I don't want to name the ethnicity, but when he died, thousands of people came to the funeral. The major intersections of Baku were closed by the police. He was well known and respected. They buried him temporarily for 1 year until the mausoleum was built. It was for 20 people underground. The granite was actually the architecture of the granite my family brought in from France and from Italy during that period, the Armenian architects. And they actually did the inscription, and it was brought from Armenia. It's an Armenian granite. So they transferred it, and it was with the help of Marshal Bagramyan's brother. He transferred it on a government truck, a big truck that transported such monuments. And you could see the plaque, and everything was in marble. And then on the side, they had a table that was marble for 20 people. Every year they would come and commemorate at his grave, his memory. And the plaque one of them is my great grandfather, his father, who perished and died in World War II, and 2 of our family members that died during the war as well. And now, in 2007, I'm about to show pictures, because in 2007 I obtained pictures from a close resource in Baku with the destruction of my grandfather's grave. And that is what is remaining. They destroyed the whole cemetery. The head of the bust is gone, and there's nothing left. They stole the marble, destroyed everything within, and they wrote dirty things on the monument without a head after they destroyed the monument.
Can you go back one, just to compare? here again?
And then it was all white marble, and the inscription was a beautiful poetry, all in 24 karat gold, inscribed inside the monument itself. And that's after the destruction. And that's inside what they did. Nothing is left, the marble is gone, everything is destroyed. And that's where the plaque was. They even destroyed the plaque. And they probably used it to build their monuments to their so-called martyrs. And that is his name. They put in the top, it's without a head in Azeri. The lady who did send it to me, she said it. And then they put a rooster on top, on the name rooster, like rooster. So they destroyed everything and spray paint. And that is what because every once in a while I do monitor the situation of the cemetery. That is the cemetery from January 31st, 2019. As you can see, on the right side, everything is buildings, hospitals, shopping malls, everything that they build, and they're building. However, as you can see, where my grandfather is buried, this area, they did not, because I called the embassy of Azerbaijan in 2007, and I told them, if I see any more destruction of my grandfather's grave, there will be a retaliation back towards your graves in Armenia, which are still standing and so well preserved. So also they named that area, it's called the Victory Park, victory over the Armenians. And that is the presidential palace of Azerbaijan. And that is the residence of the president of Azerbaijan. And this is where my grandfather's grave is. It's the only grave that's left right now, because we got some news last year that after most likely my call, that they only left that part, but they did put trees all around the grave. When I zoomed in on Google, I could still see the remains of the foundation of the monument, which fits one-on-one with the cemetery itself. That is the Armenian Church, the St. Gregory, the Illuminated Armenian Cathedral in Baku. It was built in 1863 to 1869, affiliation Armenian Apostolic Church. The current status at the present, it is used as a depository storage. However, in 1918, when the Ottoman troops invaded Baku, they reached Baku, they desecrated, looted, and burnt the cemetery, the church itself, and then it was restored. And in the 1990s, right after when the Armenians were emptied, they actually burnt the church, and the church had a big depository of Armenian literature and books, and the library behind with certain books that we will never see again. But we know that they are somehow preserved when Garigin visited Baku more than a decade ago. As you can see, they put a fence around it, and they destroyed the bell on the tower, as well as the crosses on top of the domes. And sometimes I do go on YouTube and I do read, some tourists walk by and they take videos of the Armenian church. And the Azeri comments are so disgusting that they are saying that they need to get rid of the church, that they need to blow up the church. Those are the kinds of things that they are using. So the Karabakh Movement was very important for the self-existence of the Armenian people and our nation. I remember the war as a child. I remember the soldiers coming to, the dead bodies being brought to Yerevan. My neighbors, they were young. And that gave me pride in being Armenian, because I knew that those are the soldiers, my soldiers, that defended my borders for us to have a modern and independent Armenia. And it is very sad, but we have to talk about it. We have to record stories, because these kinds of documentations are very important for the future and in proving that Armenians did once live in Azerbaijan and especially Baku. And without these kinds of pictures and stories, our stories will be lost forever, and the stories of our friends, family, neighbors, loved ones. And I am grateful to every single one of you. And I do hope that if you want to invest in Armenia, there are many beautiful monasteries that need restoration, and it doesn't take much. You can finance a small portion of it and give back, because those are the memories. Each part you will put together is a memory for your family as well, and the memory of our people that build it, because there are so many beautiful monuments that we will never see. The beautiful Khachkars in Nakhchivan, which no longer exist. The most biggest Armenian cemetery in the world in Julfa, which was fully destroyed by the Azerbaijanis and leveled to pieces, leveled to ashes. And that is why we have to visit these historical monuments, because even though many of us were born in Armenia, some were born here, but our ancestors might have walked through those monasteries at one point. You never know. So that is why, thank you very much to the Church Council, to the Father Voskan Hovanesyan, and many who gave me that opportunity to speak today, because I've never shared these pictures, some of them with the destruction. Today is the first time I ever showed it. It was emotional putting it together, and emotional for my mom, but I do want to thank every single one of you for taking your time to be here and hear the story of what happened to our people in Azerbaijan, the Armenians.
Thank you, Boris.